طلع البدر علينا من ثنيات الوداع وجب الشكر علينا ما دعا لله داع.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. أما بعد. The question on everybody's mind is about Maghrib, I'm sure. Inshallah ta'ala, I'm only going to talk for a short period of time. We're going to delay the beginning time of Maghrib for around 15-20 minutes. So we should break around 6:20 or so, inshallah. Then we'll pray Maghrib and then come back and then have Q&A. And what I want to do is to have more discussion and more questions about these topics. I'm going to lay out a short topic, not too long, because alhamdulillah we have a room full of young minds here. Most of us here are second generation, and with all respect to the first generation as well, but I'm saying most of us here are second generation. And we have these types of questions coming, much of which I'll talk about. And I want to bring up the problems that you have in your daily lives and try to shed some practical light on them. Now, the topic that has been assigned to me is basically about juggling between the sacred and the secular. About how we as Muslims are going to come to terms with our religion in the lands and the countries that we're living in. And this is a problem that especially we as Muslims have, and it is definitely an issue. Call it a problem, call it an issue. It is definitely something we need to talk about head on. Why is it an issue for us and not for other people? Well, the reason is pretty self-explanatory, it's obvious, and that is our religion is one of the very, very few religions that provides its followers with every single code of ethics and legal systems and governance that they need in their daily lives. Most other religions, of course, the most predominant religion in our times is Christianity, and it's the religion that really was the founding religion of this country, has the majority of its inhabitants and its national holidays and its character and flavor, if you like, are Christian. Like, for example, Christianity, it does not have a code of legal systems. It doesn't have a code of governance. You can be a Christian and do a million things or don't do a million things, and you'll still be within the realm of Christianity. Christianity does not dictate to you, for example, how to dress or what to eat or how to marry and divorce. Generally speaking, Christianity is not a legal tradition. The same applies to Buddhism. The same applies to Hinduism. The same applies to Confucianism and most of the other philosophies of the Eastern world. They don't have a code of morality per se, a code of ethics. Yes, they do have general broad trends, no doubt, but nothing specific. Hence, for example, the code of morality. Generally speaking, Hindus think that certain things are immoral. For example, to dress immodestly is immoral. But they haven't defined what does it mean to be immodest. They have not defined it. It's purely cultural. Hence, you will find practicing Hindus in America think that dressing in a certain way is acceptable, whereas practicing Hindus in India will think, no, this is not acceptable. They don't have a legal tradition. They don't have a code. They don't have a sharia, we call it. Now, the only tradition that is really similar to ours, and in fact, to be honest, it is more than just similar, it is amazingly similar, it's almost the same in many, many aspects, even in terms of dress, of ethics, of marriage and divorce. In fact, it is even stricter than ours. Of course, the only major tradition is that of Judaism. So, this is an important point to realize, because we have to understand we're not the only people out there that are strange by Western standards, in the sense that when we don't want to do certain things that America deems to be standard, we don't want to, drink. We don't want to dress in a certain way. We don't want to have premarital, extramarital relationships. We have a certain code of ethics when our brothers and sisters interact with one another, very modest. We're not going to act the way that society does. And we blame it on our religion, not on our culture. We say, this is something that I value from a religious perspective. We have to realize we're not the only people to do that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us an entire system of legislation. As Allah says in the Quran, وَمَنْ أَحْسَنَ اللَّهِ حُكْمًا لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. Who is better than Allah to be their legislator, if you believe in Him? Who is better than Allah? Who can judge better than Allah? As Allah says, which laws do you want to follow? The laws of Jahiliyyah, other people's laws, or the laws of Allah? You have two choices. أَفَحُكْمَ الْجَاهِلِيَّةِ يَبْغُونَ وَمَنْ أَحْسَنَ اللَّهِ حُكْمًا لِقَوْمٍ يُوقِنُونَ. Allah divides all laws into two laws. They're either man-made, which Allah calls the laws of Jahiliyyah, or they're divinely inspired, which Allah calls my laws. Which of the two do you want to follow? And then, again, there are so many verses. Allah says, if you ever disagree about anything, take it back to the Quran and Sunnah. Take it back to Allah and His Messenger. Don't just decide amongst yourselves. Don't decide by a vote. Don't decide by a majority what's right and wrong. That is the way that any democracy goes. 100 years ago, many things were illegal and immoral. In our times, many of those things are neither considered illegal nor immoral. Completely permissible. Society actually frowns upon you if you don't do it. If you are seen to be not dating the opposite gender, for example. If you're to yourself and you're not intermingling in a flirtatious or sexual fashion, society deems you to be strange. What's wrong with you? And that was not the case 100, 200 years ago. The point being, for them, morality changes. For us, it is standard. So we who have come to a land that has a different code of ethics, a different code of moralities, we're facing a dichotomy. We're facing a problem. On the one hand, if we wish to be citizens of any land, not just this country, it goes without saying we need to affirm the basic underlying principles of that country. You cannot be a citizen in Timbuktu, for example, without affirming the laws, the legal system, the code, the constitution of the land. If you were to say, I disagree with this constitution, I don't like this way of life, they're going to say, why should you be here then? What are you doing in Timbuktu? What's your purpose then? So on the one hand, in order to be a citizen of any country, you need to affirm the underlying philosophy of that country, even if you disagree with technical points. But the underlying premise has to be agreed upon. On the other hand, we as Muslims have a very different underlying premise. And that premise is our ethics, our religion, our code and conduct is only legislated by Allah. Not that it is legislated by Allah, that we say we believe in Allah's legislation and we'll let the other people do whatever they want. Rather, we believe the only authentic legislation is that of Allah. To affirm that another person has the right to legislate, this actually goes against our kalima. To say that so-and-so has the right to dictate what is halal and haram. So-and-so, or this group of body, or these 9 people, or this system, has the legitimate moral authority to propagate views of interaction, of legal code, of ethics, as we said. This is basically making this group of people a god besides Allah. And this is clearly mentioned in Surah Tawbah and many things where Allah says in the Quran, they took their priests and their rabbis as gods besides Allah, as lords besides Allah. And a Christian convert came to the Prophet and he said, O Messenger of Allah, we didn't used to worship our priests and rabbis. What is the meaning of this verse? The Prophet explained, he said, didn't they change the law of God? Didn't they change the law of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? They allowed what Allah had prohibited, and they prohibited what Allah had allowed. They changed your sharia, and you agree with that change. The Christian said yes, or he was a Muslim convert at the time. The Prophet said, this was how you made them into gods. This was how you turned them into lords. So the Muslim who is practicing here in America faces a dichotomy, and it's problematic. It is difficult. It is difficult because, especially in the milieu, in the content we find ourselves in, where we are under scrutiny, where the media, the government, Homeland Security, FBI, they're all looking at us.